Hey everybody, Artosis here, and I'm doing a little strategy and training Q&A type of thing, where I just basically had people ask me on my Facebook, any questions that they had, and I'll go ahead and try to answer as many as I can in a reasonable amount of time. And I actually have a little giveaway during this as well. My favorite question that I go through this and end up seeing will win one of these bad boys. This is the SteelSeries Siberia version 2. It's super comfortable. Really nice headset. So anyways, I will announce that later on. But let me go ahead and just start reading off some of these questions and answering them for everyone. So, alright. Well, some of these questions are not... I'm going to have to go through and read them. There's like a lot of questions here, and some of them like don't say what race you're asking the question for and whatnot. So that's pretty hard. Anyways, how do you deal with 2-port Banshee, 1 base and 2 base variants as Protoss? Well, if it's 2-port Banshee, you have to go really hardcore on anti-Banshee. Like, later in the game, if they're still going Sky Terran, it gets a little weird and complicated the way you have to do it. It'll oftentimes involve High Templars and whatnot, but Blink Stalkers and, of course, any Phoenixes will completely own them. Putting up some cannons isn't bad. Basically, 2-port Banshee builds, they invest so much in that you are actually going to kind of kill it if you stop it at all. So you can actually overcommit to stopping it, such as the Phoenixes, such as just go Stalkers, such as make a bunch of cannons. But cannons, of course, are going to be the worst of those. And remember to have a lot of observers, not just 2. You're going to want a few of them, because someone who's investing that much is likely to make a couple Vikings to try to pick those off as well. Alright, how should a player go about improving his mechanics? And what area, examples, minimap usage, awareness, and mouse accuracy do you feel most important to improve to become a top player? And then there's some other pieces to it, but it kind of asks the same thing over and over. Alright, so to improve your mechanics, you really want to work on the macro first. And I know that everyone kind of says this, but macro is really what's important. You need to have a lot of units to do things with, or you'll never understand why you lose. It's a lot easier to spend all your money and then get slaughtered in a battle because you have no micro, and figure out where things went wrong. Because if otherwise, there's like so many variables involved. Like, let's say that you have kind of bad macro, but pretty decent micro, and you're microing your tail off in a battle, and you lose, and you look at the game, you're like, really, why did I lose this? Well, if you had a lot more units, it'd be so much easier to tell, because units and mass actually beats out micro, which is why we see more macro-based like champions and stuff like that rather than micro-based. Where, I mean, both of them can end up working, but macro is like the long-term solution to everything. So that's going to be what you really want to work on. The other stuff comes next. Here it mentioned minimap usage and awareness. That's actually something that you'll learn like pretty darn late. Like, you can be high masters and bad at the minimap, and eventually what you'll do is just kind of focus on staring at the minimap as much as you can. Like, your eyes should always be darting down like that during the game. Like, you might see, like, let's say that you watch one of these terms like an MLG, an IM, anything where it shows the player on the camera at points. You'll actually see their eyes like dart every now and then, and you'll see stuff like this. Ready? This one? That one, they were looking at their supply. This one? That's the minimap. And you'll see all sorts of stuff like that. Oh, someone's attacking the top left of my screen. Okay, there you go. But that's why their eyes are moving around, and you'll see them move like, they'll stare straight a lot of the time because they're focusing on things happening on the screen, and then they'll dart to the corners that they need to see things on. Anyways, next question. What are the situations that would warrant a flank from multiple sides with Zerg? Is a flank ever a bad idea? You know what? If it's a good flank, it's always a good idea with Zerg. But it matters your unit composition. Like, you don't want to flank when Broodlords are involved. That needs to be a death ball. If you have Hydras in your army, like a Roach Hydra army in ZVZ, you normally want to face with a good concave, but not really a flank, because you really need the bulk in front of your Hydras or you'll die. But yeah, you basically always want to flank other than just a couple very specific scenarios with Zerg, because that's kind of what they do. The Zerg can screw up AI, the units don't require a ton of micro, it's just kind of like slam into your opponent from all over the place, and he should become overwhelmed and not be able to micro against you. All right, while training, watching replays is very vital in learning from what you do well and bad. What is a proper way to gauge a replay on how well you did and figure where you could improve, since winning doesn't always mean you played well, the other guy could have played bad? Oh, I like that. That's actually a really good question. So, all right, to gauge from a replay, this is the way that personally I do it. I watch the replay up to a point where I see like something that could have been a game-changing mistake being made. All right, so what are some of these things? Let's say, you have like, let me go like way out there and then narrow it down. Let's say that you have a misrallied your first Colossus, right? And he rallies out into the center because you had him on the observer rally, and Terran happens to be out there. He just picks him off. You kill basically nothing with him. You're like, ah, crap. And then the game goes on for a while more, but you end up losing. The Terran just takes too many edges. Like, for instance, I would look at that in a replay and say, oh, this replay isn't worth anything. One Colossus is too powerful in my army early on. It affects every other thing for the rest of the game. So that's like a big one. I mean, that actually will happen occasionally, but other than that, like, I would take a look at broad stroke things. Am I keeping up my probe SCV drone production? Am I doing like a cheesy thing? Did it get scouted? Things like that are much more straightforward, where it's like, well, you know what, you tried to hide cloak Banshee, he scouted it, he made a turret and a Viking and a Raven. What are you going to do, right? There's not a whole lot to study from there. You kind of took a risk and didn't end up paying off. But in overall macro games, yeah, look at general trends. I always look at the first battle that's lost, or look at any situations in which you lose a lot of miners, stuff like that. Those are all really good places to look. Yeah, did you scout correctly, stuff like that? Did you miss something silly? Did you actually see something silly, but you didn't see it? Like a dropship flew by a pylon, and you missed it. It's like, well, I got to work on my mini-map awareness then. So that's the way I like to look at it. All right, so how do you stop a 1-1-1 playing as Protoss when the Terran has no Banshees but has a lot of Marines with Stim? Okay, so this is like, I guess if it's a 1-1-1 in this case, it's going to be Stim, Marine, with some Siege Shanks and some Medevacs. Well, that's a pretty all-any-thing, and there's a couple ways. You can rush up to Colossus and try it that way. Otherwise, you can kind of overwhelm and use good force fields. They aren't going to have a lot of medevacs, so just anytime you could force field off like 1 or 2 hexes and get away, when they stimmed, they're going to lose a lot of energy and a lot of health, and the next stim is going to be as powerful, and the third one's going to be almost non-existent as far as the power goes, because they're going to be losing a lot of hit points, not healing quickly. But you're going to want to basically force field things off, like engage in small chokes or on ramps when they're coming across the map with it. And a big part of this is being careful with your Zealots. A lot of times people will just do the force field wall, and all the Zealots will run forward, and all their shooting units will be shooting at that little group of Marines. But the thing is, as the Zealots come closer, the Marines in the back plow them down. So you have to be really careful about that. You'll watch like top level players, if they play against something like this, they'll pull those Zealots down a little bit more. You might need to use them a little bit. It matters how many you end up force fielding in. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience to know exactly how to do it. But you got to be careful about that, basically. If you start hemorrhaging units out, you're going to die. If you use too many force fields, you're going to die. It takes some precision, and it takes some skill to hold off one of those. But once you start to get the hang of it and start to figure out, oh, okay, if I went, like, let's say 1 gate expand and I see this coming, maybe you have, like, 2 Immortals out of your Robo, and then you're just going 4 gate units or something, just picking things off left and right, because it's all about picking things off and whittling down the Terran army. That type of army needs a certain mass to be able to kill you off with, and that certain mass gets really good against all the Protoss units, which is why with the force fields you cut that mass down several times and fight much smaller masses, and then by the end you have such a mass that you roll it over. So it's kind of like almost tempo based, not the right word, but anyways. Why is StarCraft 2 so fun? Yeah, it's just the most fun game ever, man. It's the best. With Ravens now being meta in late game TVZ, should we expect to see more mid-game Ravens in low numbers? You know what? Mid-game in low numbers. Look, I think that having 1 Raven out early on isn't terrible if you have the time in your build for it, just to help out with some creep and stuff like that. But no, I don't think we're going to see it as much in the mid-game, because in the mid game, you're really trying to get out a lot of medevacs to actually, have the healing power you need, get the drops done that you need to do. And Ravens, at that point, you're not going to invest in the Corvid reactor for the extra energy. You're not going to get Seeker missiles because you really want those later on. They're not as useful early on. I mean, yeah, if you happen to get one off on a mute or something, that's great. But it's really when you get that super turtle style against the slow-moving units of your opponent, like Broodlords, like Corruptors, then it becomes really powerful. And by then you normally have a gas bank as well because Terran's so mineral heavy early on. So I would say no, probably won't see that many in the earlier game. Or in the mid game. Alright, so. Let's see. Gotta skip that one. Alright, how much has standard play impacted by map size and number of spawn locations? To what extent are build orders and tech choices affected? Ooh, that's a really good question as well. Okay, so yeah, standard play, of course, is going to be affected a lot by map size. And again, I have to go to the extremes to really explain this. Look at a map. I'll use one a lot of people have probably seen, Atlantis Spaceship. And then look at a map, one of our earliest maps, Steps of War. Now, Steps of War was the smallest pro map ever used. It was released with the game, like in the beta. And it was so small. How do I even explain how small this was? This was the smallest. It's stupid how small this map was. It literally takes to get from your natural to your opponent's natural with a stalker, like seconds, like what, 15 seconds or something. It's no time at all. If Terran moves out, he's there before you can get a warping round done. Like, if someone moves out against Zerg, you can't even hatch Zerglings in time. Now, on that map, let's say back then you had a professional TVZ going on. Zerg all game has to continually make a lot of lings or roaches or whatever units they're going because Terran can move out at any time and be there before a larva inject can finish and more units can be made. So you had to have enough that whatever you made in the tiny amount of time that they were coming over added to your army would be enough to kill off their army, which destroyed Zerg economies, and basically the map turned out to be imbalanced. Whatever. That's the way that standard play would have to be on maps of that size. Whereas you look at Atlantis Spaceship, that map is so giant that Zerg makes, you see games sometimes where, let's say TVZ once again, you see games where there's like 6 queens and 1 ling on the map until Terran starts to move out, and then there's a big massive production. So those are the two standards, let's say, on those maps. Now, either one may not be balanced, but as you get closer to the center, you'll find the better balance of what standard play will be on a map. So basically, every map has a way to be played, and you can import other styles and things on maps. There's some great metagame choices in doing things like that. But yeah, that's basically, maps completely change the way that you should play at the top pro level. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that should be the way at lower levels, because a lot of times you're still practicing basics and mechanics and stuff, and then repetition is oftentimes better. So don't take it the wrong way. Don't be like, well, you know what, I'm in silver, I'm trying to get up, I want to hit, platinum by the end of the season. It's like, well, cool, but don't necessarily try to play each map different. That's really, it gets very difficult to do, and you really want to be much closer to the pro level to be able to do that. All right. Since we are watching a lot of PvP in the WCS at the moment, do you feel it's better to play safer Creator Prime style in order to just not die? Or should we be focused on more aggressive builds in order to keep our opponents honest? Also, as a side note, whose PvP style do you currently enjoy the most at the moment? Okay, so I'll answer this backwards. Whose style PvP do I like the most? I like Younghua's style. He is totally cool. Like, he tries to control the game a lot of the time. Alright, so basically, should you focus on aggressive builds or should you play safe? Well, there's the 3 different types, right? There's the playing safe, there's the greedy, and there's the aggression. And the answer is you actually have to mix all of them in, because it's it's like one of these tactical wheels that we talk about. Of course, this one's much smaller than some of the bigger ones, like a Tal'Darim PvP. But on a standard like force fielding map, if you play something super aggressive and all-inning, that is going to kill off a greedy build. Now, if you play a greedy build, that should give you edges against the safe build. Not necessarily kill it straight up, but you're definitely going to have edges, you're definitely going to get ahead. Safe build, of course, going to be harder against that greedy build as we mentioned before, but going to do very well against the all-any build. Like, you're just going to crush it and get a free win. Now, the way they match up against each other, I prefer the safer play. I mix in a little bit of the other two, just a little. It's smart to do. And to be honest, everyone should mix in a lot of each. Maybe even do them in thirds if you want. But the safe build won't always just die to the greedy build, but will get behind, so that's a tough place to be in. But it will most of the times just crush the aggressive build. So like for ladder, for instance, if I'm playing on, let's say, the North American ladder, I'll probably play the safe play a lot of the time. But in fact, I play safe play most of the time anyways, just because you never are dead straight up, which I find really annoying for practice when I don't get enough time for my games. But yeah, I mean, it's important to mix in all the styles. It truly is. But for practice sake, I would say practice a little bit more of the safe play than the others, because it's going to allow you to get into the longer game situations and understand those situations more. But definitely don't do just that, because then you're going to be lost. People will figure you out and always be greedy against you, and you'll be dead. Alright. I play Protoss in Gold League, and I have a lot of trouble against Zerg, specifically with the large number of roaches they can produce, which seems to always outnumber my Stalker and Immortal numbers, especially when Lings get a surround on me. Is there a certain composition I should be trying for when playing against Zerg with this type of mid-game? Alright. So, it's harder for me to give specific strategies for, like, let's say, as this says, Gold League, because that's not what I'm experienced with, and that's not something that I get to really play around that level, so it's harder to say. But, I mean, if you're having a hard time about things, let's take a look here. It's a lot of roaches, and it's a lot of lings, and it's when they surround. And you're basically going here for, it looks like Immortals and Stalkers mostly. Okay, so against this, here's just a few tips, right? Stay on edges of the map. Never be out in the open, because if you're out in the open, surrounds can happen. But if you're on an edge, I mean, it's going to be a lot harder to flank you, because they can't run around to the other side. They can only run around on one side. And your force fields are going to be much more powerful, because you already have a wall. And there's going to be less surface area in units, because your units are already up against that wall. So even if you miss some force fields, it's not going to be as bad. Also, if it's something more roach and ling based, you may want to take up to Colossus and not focus on some of these compositions that you see at the pro level, because at the pro level it's like very sharp timings where if you don't hit it, there's going to be like Broodlords, bam, you're dead. What's up? But at a level like Gold League, those Broodlords are going to be a little bit later. They're going to be a little bit less economy behind them. So a more cost-efficient unit for a situation like this, like the Colossus, may help you get through this. So that's the best I can do with that. Thanks for asking. All right. Let's see. One second, guys. There's some troll questions as well, of course. Alright, this is interesting. Similar to previous, but a better question, I feel. Nukes have their place manipulating army position versus slow, death volley armies. Do you feel they have a place manipulating a faster, more mobile army, such as heavy Zergling composition, added bonus, nuking creep tumors, and assuming difficulty you could overcome, nukes... could nukes be the go-to in TVZ and perhaps other matchups? So basically the question is, nukes, can they be used against quicker units, not just like the Broodlord-based armies and stuff like that? At that point it becomes a little bit more luck-based. We do see sometimes people just throwing down nukes saying, I think Zerg should be moving through here pretty soon. I think I've seen a nuke hit like that twice maybe. I don't think it's like necessarily the go-to in that situation, but late game, when nukes are more viable, it's normally like a Broodlord tech anyways. So could nukes be the go-to in TVZ? I think they're definitely in the late game something that people have to consider as something to get. Seeker missiles are kind of replacing them right now, but nukes are definitely still like a doable thing. I don't think they're going to be so useful against things like Zerglings. They take too long to come down, and people are checking their Zerglings more often than other armies, because a Zergling army caught off guard can die very quickly, whereas if it's like a whole death ball, you don't need to look at as much. It's moving across the screen very slowly. It's like, well, it's going to be a while to engage. So you have more of a chance maybe to just hit that, less of a time to correct because it's slow. So yeah, I don't think it'll be that useful against things like Zerglings. Can Terran mecha versus Protoss, and if so, how? Look, yeah, I still think so. We see it mixed in every now and then. It's definitely much harder than going for a bio-style play, but Sea Chinks are amazing, as Beyond showed us in the last season yet again. They're like the greatest unit. I think we're going to see it a lot with Heart of the Storm coming out, because they're making it even, like, they're making it way easy to do with these new added, like the Warhound and the, what's it called, the Battle Hellion transformation, which gives the Hellions a lot more hit points. So with those two coming in, I think that we're going to see a lot more mech going on, of course. But, I mean, I guess just wait for that. People are just too busy winning money to try out new hard strategies like that too much. Alright, if you scout Nexus first as Terran, is the appropriate response to go fast, third CC, apply pressure, or something else entirely? Okay, I would say that it would definitely be a fast third CC, and not just that. I would probably go a fast third CC in your main, turtle heavy, while getting 2 engineering bays, because Protoss off of a Nexus first will either go directly into pressure or play a turtley macro game. Now, if he's going to play a turtley macro game, then the fact that you went 3 command center and your 2 E-bays quicker than him, then you're going to get a little edge there. If he goes for the attack, you're already playing a little bit turtley. You know, you can make a few extra bunkers and stuff to be safe, because Protoss kind of has to do one of those. They normally don't play very middle of the road after a Nexus first. That's very rare to see, and they normally get punished if they do. So, and even if they play middle of the road, you're fine with that build as well. So that's what I would say would be best. Alright, so as a Protoss, what do you think is the safest, most optimal mid-game transition into getting a third base after Protoss Forge fast expands and Zerg is on 3 bases? Alright, so this is a pretty hard question. It matters a lot on maps when you want to go for a third base of Protoss against a 3-base Zerg. There are a lot of ways to do it. Alright, there's you can absolutely go like Immortal Sentry expand, the safest way that I've seen to do this, but you have to hit a good timing afterwards, so don't just do this and wonder why you died of Broodlords. Is Puzzle did this a lot. For instance, check out Puzzle PVZ on Atlantis Spaceship and any VODs of this same time period. He's the first person that I saw really do this super well, and then I saw it done a lot at like an MLG or something. Anyways, it's basically like you go for something that begins to look like an Immortal Sentry build, and then you kind of tech up to your 7 gates, or mass up to your 7 gates or so, and make your Nexus then, and you just have such production that they can't kill you throat chilling at all. But you have to make sure you get your blink timely, just in case of mutas, and you have to be very careful about Broodlord timings with that. But that's probably the safest way. One of the harder ways to do it, but one of the cooler ways, is on a map like Daybreak. If you take a look at the way Oz does it, he did against Stefano in the MLG Arena. Yeah, check that one out. It's a really cool build order where you go off 1 gate, 3 Nexuses into double Void Ray. So that's a good one to check out as well. That's one that I'm actually going to rip soon and start messing around with. Alright, so how viable is an air toss type army, and what is a good way to transition to it versus Zerg? Okay, air-based Protoss army, super late game you can go into like a carrier-based army. Phoenix-based armies don't work for long. Like, it's okay to have them in the early game, but basically, let me go first a way to transition into it, so I don't forget about that. To transition into it, you need to have a lot of bases, you need to throw up a lot of Stargates, you need to be controlling the map a little bit, and then as you lose units, like you lose a battle or something, if you like trade battles, trade your armies in a battle, like both you run into each other, both your armies are basically dead, then you can switch over, because it'll take Zerg a little while to get back in their units. You have to make sure, of course, you have enough to stay alive at home. It's a tricky little thing. How viable is it, though? That gets a little bit harder. I feel like you definitely need Psystorm with it, or really good Zergs with correct Infestor, Corruptor usage should be able to take it down. So definitely keep that in mind. Could you please do a video on scouting, denying scouts, hiding tech, and the art of playing mind games with an opponent? That's a really good idea. That's definitely a hard video to make. I'll definitely start thinking about it, though. Thank you. What is the best way for a low-level player new to the game to get better? It's your first PC game, and very basic tips to help get better. Well, you gotta focus on, if you're really low level and you want to get better, focus on making workers. Make your workers non-stop. It's probably smarter to start with Terran or Protoss because they're more linear. Zerg is a little bit more weird to use for like someone that's never played an RTS before. Just the way they function economy-wise versus army building-wise. Because the hardest thing for new players a lot of the times is just non-stop SCV/pro production. And with drones, you can't really do non-stop. So I would definitely suggest using one of those two races. Make those workers non-stop. Try to always be making things. Spend your money. A lot of new, like super new players are like, well, why do I need more production buildings? You know, isn't that a waste of money? I can build more units with that. No. You need to have your army out quickly. So keep that in mind. Other than that, I would just watch a lot of content, watch broadcasts and stuff. Maybe check out the Day 9 Daily, something like that, to help younger, newer players to actually improve. And, once you start climb up higher and higher, you're going to have conversations with people, find other ways, watching more pro games and stuff like that to help you out. Right. Why are supply drops, and to a lesser extent scans, so underused by Terran? Is Terran economy too fragile to cut mule drops after saturating 2 mineral lines? Are mules required to keep up with chrono boost and larva inject? Now this is a really interesting, good question. I like it quite a bit. Alright, so the way that Terran's being played right now with Marine Marauder Medevac, it's very like tempo based. You have to be on the map controlling it, you have to be moving around, you have to be harassing, you have to be engaging, you have to be whittling things down because you're basically using the lowest tier units to fight your battles. It's not like, Zerg and Protoss are going to tech up faster and get kind of better units overall. So to do this, you need to have extra units. You have to have a lot of units. You have to be able to move around and actually have these battles. Mules help you speed that up, which is why mules are so important right now, and everyone's using them a ton. Now, let's say for a moment we had like a small map, someone going mech on it. Mules would be important in the early game to get that jump start, but when things start to settle down a little bit and it starts to go like late, things like supply drops are going to be more powerful. Things like scans are going to be more powerful to find the positioning of your enemy so you don't get out of position, and to conserve mineral patches and things, and the fact that you don't need as many minerals is so gas heavy. But with Terran, it's all about minerals right now with Marine Marauder and Medevac. It's easy to get enough gas, but it's hard to get enough minerals, so that's really why. Do you think Protoss playstyles have changed much since the 1.5 patch for Zerg? Well, I think it's always changing. 1.5, I mean, I'm not good at the numbers. Maybe that was... I'm not sure what patch that was, actually. I know it was a recent one, but I don't know if there's any true balance changes. But in recent times, it changes like every week. It's like there's always these little fluctuations going on all over the place. Because, well, that's what you have to do. The game is going to always evolve like that, no matter what. What's the greatest skills to have to be a pro gamer? I think it's actually, I mean, there's a lot of gaming skills, but one thing that I'd like to answer this question with is, it's really important to, stay calm, to just have a good mentality. We see a lot of players that get very emotional, and this can hurt them in the long run. I mean, you can have your emotions work for you, or you can kind of just stay calm. I think those are both good ways. Like, look at White Raw. He's still around doing stuff because he's so calm. But at the same time, you can have players that can get really emotional, like Nanawa, that succeed greatly. But you have to be very aware of yourself emotionally, of the way that your brain operates, so that you can keep yourself well balanced and continue to play your best. I think that that's one of the most powerful skills. Look at Stefano, for instance. He's calm all the time, doesn't really get rattled. He's just like, well, I think I'm going to win. And he just goes and he tries to win, and he does his best. And he's always playing up near his maximum level. So I think that that's one of the most important ones. All right, I'm only going to be able to do a few more because my mouth is getting really dry. I've been doing this for a little bit. All right. Let's see here. I want to beat a Terran. I'm a Protoss. Whenever I try to early pressure, he wins. I do a 2-gate Nexus. Terran all-ins me. You don't know what to read that they're doing. I try to scout. How to beat a solid Terran. Okay, so basically, how do you read what a Terran player is doing and stop it? Well, I would suggest, if you're having a really hard time reading what they're doing, start scouting on 9 for a little bit. This is going to actually build your confidence, because it's going to hurt your economy a little bit. Excuse me. It's going to hurt your economy a little bit, but it's going to be worthwhile to help you figure out what Terran early game looks like. Now, when you scout a 9, you're going to be in on almost every map before their wall-in is up. So you're going to be able to see, okay, are they taking gas? Are they making a command center? Is there no gas? Are they building extra barracks? And you're going to be able to see a lot of that before the probe actually ends up dying. And that should give you a little bit of comfort. And from there, I would suggest you just go up into 1 gate, expand into 3 gates in a robo, and get the observer out. And with that information, you do that for a couple weeks. I feel like that's like something I did for a long time with Protoss, even until just a few months ago, like 2 months ago. And so for something like a year with Protoss, I was scouting on 9 every game against Terran, just to make sure. You know, even when I wasn't really scared anymore of a lot of things, I was still doing it, just to really understand what the early game looks like for Terran. And I mean, I guess there's some other ways you could do it, but with the probe there, I feel like it changes the way they think a little bit. But for me, it was a really useful exercise, basically. And once I felt completely confident and safe with what could happen from Terran, what the timings were of various things, I started, scout a little bit later. And, I recommend. I recommend it. All right. We'll do, I guess, 2 more questions for now. All right. PvZ is an interesting matchup for the Zergs, as Protoss has to fear counterattacks when you move out. What are some effective ways to deal with these counterattacks? What is a good amount of army to leave behind, or number of cannons to cover expansions? Side question from that, mutas have been a big problem for you lately, and they've not been able to move out due to the overwhelming number of mutas without enough storms to push them back for me to move out at all. Should I tech to starport with Phoenix range upgrades, or just hold storms for as long as possible? Okay, these are really good questions, actually. Okay, so first part, the counterattacks. Now let's talk about like Ling Roach counterattacks. We'll get into mutas after this. For like a Ling Roach type of counterattack, first off, you should have your buildings walled in. You should have some defensive cannons, and finish your wall in as you leave your base. Now, if they are, you'll probably leave like a sentry there or something if you're pretty sure it's going to happen, and you can always warp in some more. Now, if they are coming for the counterattack, first off, you should be zoning out, right? Like, let's say it's Metropolis, right? Your top left, he's like top. You're the top side on the bottom. He's the top side on the right. You know what I mean? Left and right. Okay. Anyways, you should be like sending like a probe or a zealot or something around the other way to see if there's a counterattack coming as you're moving out with your army. Now, if it's a big counterattack, you have to go back and kill it with your army. If it's not a big counterattack, then you can kind of hold it off, and then he's just missing a piece of his army at home. It's a hard thing to decide. It's a hard thing that you're going to have to practice a lot, but that's the nature of counterattacks. You have to decide, do I go back to crush this? Because if it's big enough for you to go back to crush, crushing it should give you an advantage. Zergs can't just take an advantage in a situation like this. You have to decide whether this is going to be like an equal playing field where like, oh, they might kill a few buildings by walling, but I can hold, I'll warp in a couple units and a few sentries, and then my cannons will be able to scare them off and it'll be fine. Or, oh, I need to go back, this is a lot of units, but when I kill them with force fields and blinks and stuff, not letting them get away, then my army's going to be even scary, and I can go on my attack a little bit later and it won't matter as much. But, a good Zerg counterattack, that's hard to do against, so definitely take some preparation. Alright, so the next part is mutas, and, okay, so there's a few different things. First off, if you are already going starport, then you can go Phoenixes against mutas. You can't put it up after they've started mutas, or you will lose every single time, no matter what. Alright, so Phoenixes, basically, the way to put it is, they counter mutas, but they do not reactively counter mutas. If they've already started going mutas and you try to go Phoenixes, you are going to lose the game. It's too slow, but if you already have some out, if you already have that starport up, then yes, you can go them because you already have a base of Phoenixes. It takes Phoenixes a little bit to actually get powerful against mutas. Like you need 6+ against a decent flock. So that's kind of why that is. So don't just go to them because you're afraid of the mutas. Now, if you opened, like, if you're going Colossus Stalker against someone and that person commits to mass muta, here's what you're going to do. You are going to make your army basically maxed out, and this is someone really committing, like not going Hive. You're going to make your army basically maxed out, and you're going to bank up some minerals, and you're going to grab a bunch of probes and bring them with you. Because 100%, when you have decent upgrades with Blinkstalker Colossus, Zerg is not going to fight your army with a mutilating army. They are going to counterattack. So you bring a bunch of probes with you. I'm serious. I bring like 12 probes with me, and I have like 1,700 minerals banked, and I go. And it's good to have a warp prism too, by the way. Those are useful. Now, when the Ling Muta attack comes, thing is, his army can't beat yours head up. Not going to happen. Absolutely not. So you go kill his base, he kills yours, and you can build another base. What's up? This army just, it's not going to be able to attack you. I've had a lot of games end like that. So that's just a little tip. It's hard to do. It's kind of crazy, but you can't spread yourself thin against Ling Muta. It's what it wants. You can't like leave units at home against it. And if you're going Colossus already, then if you try to take up to High Templars, I feel like they'll have Broodlords by the time you get there, and then you don't really have anti-Broodlord tech. It's just like, it gets messy. Now, if you aren't going Colossus, you're just going kind of regular tech, yeah, you can definitely go up to Psystorm. And then at that case, what I do is I leave some cannons around. I put 2 High Templars at each base, and I just really stare at the mini-map as I walk out. Because if you hit a few storms, you get like 2 storms on mutas, and they basically just have to run away. So yeah, that's how I deal with it. All right, and one more. How do you train effectively, and how do you manage your time well with exercise? Is playing with longer sessions with longer breaks, or more shorter sessions with shorter breaks better? Now, I think that this there's a few schools of thought on this. You definitely need breaks in there. Exercise is definitely going to help you out because healthy body, healthy mind. And I'm sure there's sports psychologists that would be much better answering this than me. But from what I understand, like let's say that you're a huge time pro gamer, like you want to play like 12 hours a day or something. Do it in something like 4-hour chunks. Don't try to go over about 4 hours. Your brain is just not going to learn as well. It's not going to react as well. Things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of books you can read on things like this, like sports training and whatnot. This actually, and studying and stuff like that, because this is like a mix. It's like a mix between training for sport and studying in school. StarCraft is ridiculously hard. All right, so I think that has to be the end for this video for now. There's still so many really good questions in here. I might even do another one of these next week, so I'm really sorry if I haven't gotten to your question yet. I'm still going to scroll through and read the rest of the questions at least and decide a question that I really like to win that nice headset as I showed before from SteelSeries. Thanks, SteelSeries. So yeah, I'll let the winner know of that. And guys, thanks for watching. This little Q&A has been brought to you by Team Red Baron Pizza. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later.